I've heard there was a secret chord.
Hey guys, so I got back from church, finished up some homework, and wanted to talk a little bit about the sermon today and last week's sermon. Um, so the past couple weeks we've been focusing on a topic called like audacious prayers, and I mean that's pretty straightforward. But last week we really did the prayer that was it was just God to say like God use me, and you don't really find yourself saying just use me. You find yourself saying like, oh, what should I be doing, or God use me but not too much. God use me but give me time for fun. God use me but don't use me to help that person because I don't like them. Or like I have my comb, sorry. We just find these ways of like restricting his use of us, or like what we will allow ourselves to be used by. Um, and it was just, it was a really cool sermon last week. But this week, um, the audacious prayer is to God, like, give me a new heart. Um, in the movie, or in movies, and in like just in life, like you'll find yourself with like a phone or computer and it's just not working, and you're like, oh, go to the smartest person you know, like, what do I do, like, help me. And like, they just like turn it off and on and just like reset it, and you're like, well, that was simple, I could have done that. And that's really what this is about. It's like resetting and recharging your life is I find that like at times when we need to be reset, when we need to be recharged, when we need to be given a new heart, we need to be anew, um, is when we're at like a really low. And so like when your phone's broken, that's pretty low. It needs to be fixed, and it needs to just be reset, just be reborn. And that's kind of like what we were focusing on in this lesson. And it really drew me back to like I was in this place where I wasn't not a Christian growing up. I was a Christian, went to church, and I kind of just died out of it. It's getting cold in here, so I just kind of died out of it a little bit, and got, I don't know, I just got overwhelmed in it, and I didn't really understand why I was there, why I was believing what I was believing, why there was this checklist for life, and there shouldn't be, there isn't. I just had to realize that, and a lot of you may not agree with this, but like for faith and for religion, it is like your own for yourself. I think it's less of like a textbook way of life and more of like a spiritual, metaphysical, like in here part of your life. And so I just had to realize that, and I had to realize that what other people believed, and even if it was other Christians, that doesn't mean that that's like what I believe, and it's okay that I believe something different, and it's okay that I don't necessarily agree with everything in the Bible, or it's okay that this and that and things like that. And um, for me, the most important thing is to have like a spiritual relationship with God and with Jesus and with yourself, is the most important part, and just be able to love people. And this was like this was me being reset. Like I had to be reset, and I have this like, it wasn't like one moment, but, and I didn't pray like God give me a new heart. I was just like, honestly, I find myself when I have like all these prayers and I get so scared to pray something, because then I'm like, well, if it's not answered, or what if the answer is not what I was wanting, and then like I shouldn't have prayed it and stuff like that. And so I get timid and shy about it. And sometimes I'm like, God, you know what's going on in my head. You know what I'm feeling. You know everything. You know where I need to be. You know where I've been. You know where I want to be. You know everything. You know what's going to be good for me. You know what's going to be bad for me. You know what I need to endure so that I can grow as a person. You know. And I can't even say that in my head. I'm just like, God, help. Like, that's what I find myself praying sometimes, is because I'm so, like, overwhelmed. And at the church service, we've been writing down, like, prayers, big prayers on a note card and pinning it on the prayer board. And they're like, what's something? And I'm like, I can't sum my prayer. Like, I can't say, like, this is my one prayer. And then there are people who are praying for their cancer to go away, or praying for their mom to get better. They're praying for, like, serious things that are worthy of prayer. Everything, but, like, everything's worthy of prayer, but I feel like my prayers are just not as significant. Just like I feel like this process that I went through is not as bad as it could have been. And yeah, it's not, but it's still, like, it's real, it's significant, it's powerful and important. And so, I don't know, I just get timid about my prayers. So it's ironic, is I actually I have this thought, this prayer that just reoccurs in my head, but I almost, like, feel guilty that I keep praying and it doesn't happen. And so I, like, wrote it down, and I was like, so he was saying, don't let your expectations, like, your expectations are different than what's God's plan. And so next to that, I wrote, like, I'm scared to pray for this, because what if God doesn't have that in his plan for me, and it's a no or something, and I don't want to know that answer. Like, I'd rather it be up to the, like, in the air than be given a no, I guess. And part of me's like, well, if I don't pray it and it's a no, then maybe my fault was just not praying. It wasn't, and, like, there's just this, like, game going through my head. And so right after that, we're going through, and there's 3 points that he was talking about, a story of Naaman, and Naaman had leprosy and needed to be healed. And this story in Second Kings, chapter 5, it's like 1 through, like, 15, 16. And basically, like, God, the 3 bullet points we talked about was, you want to have a pure heart, to pray for a pure heart, persistent heart, and a grateful heart. And, like, the one thing they said is, pure heart doesn't imply a perfect heart, it's a pliable heart. Which means, like, have you ever heard, I played sports growing up, and so the coaches are always like, coaches want you, or teachers want you, or whatever, like you, when they know you're willing to try and you'll make the changes they want you to make. And so pliable is, like, imagine yourself like clay, like, you're moldable. He can shape you into what he wants from you, versus you're rigid and stiff and, like, metal you can't bend or something. And so you're basically saying, like, use me, and then you're saying, God, shape me. So you're asking him to just shape me into the being he wants you to be. And then we talked about a persistent heart. And this is where I was like, it went straight to that prayer I'd written down, is to never give up on God. So what they said is, you can pray something every day for your whole life, and you could be like 75, and you've prayed this for 75 years, obviously not all of them, but every day, and that 75th year on that day is when it's answered. It's being persistent and being a persistent follower of Jesus. You're never giving up on God. And that's tough for me, because I do sway, and I think that's where our sin and our imperfection comes in, is that we do sway away from God. We're not, like, a perfect 100% infallible, like, we're not. Jesus was, and that's it. But we can strive to be, and so we're striving to have a pure heart. We're striving to have a persistent heart. And what he says was this, is, like, you never know when your day may be, like, the day that prayer is answered. So I'm going to keep praying this prayer, and no matter how stupid and dumb I feel for how many years, how many days, how many months, however long I've prayed for this, I'm going to keep praying, because I haven't had a no. People may say, like, oh, just give up on it, just whatever, or, like, on a prayer or something. Like, trying to think of a example that is, like, for example, I don't want to be an author, but say you want to be an author, and you pray and pray and pray and pray and pray and pray and pray, and when you're 45, like I wanted to be an author at 18, and then you're 45 and you get the opportunity. It's like that, like just be persistent in your prayers. You never know, like this almost makes me scared to not pray it that day, because what if like that was the day it would have been answered? But at the same time, I feel like in your prayers, if you're consistently thinking about something, if you don't like sit down and like pray like intentionally, your mind, if you have that relationship with God, I think your mind all day goes through a conversation with God. The way you talk to yourself, like I find myself like it's like directed at God. And oh my god, I'm not a pretty honest, sorry. And that is just like, I think that you don't have to feel guilty that you didn't sit down and pray because you had that conversation all day with him. And this is also like one of those things that you may not agree with, but it's kind of just what I believe in. So I'm going to keep praying that prayer. So it was kind of cool that my question I'd written down on my paper was then answered. And I was praying about it at the time, like during the service. So my prayer was answered in there. My prayer about keep praying, I guess. And then the last one was a grateful heart. And this is where like we don't sit down and like appreciate the things that God's done for us. The guy giving the sermon, I don't know. Yeah, pastor. I always get mixed up with all the names of like pastor, preacher. I don't know what's appropriate to say, but he spoke about how he has a grandson now, and it's a baby boy, and the baby was up crying all night, and he was staying at their house, and so he like took the baby for like hours and spent time with him like at 3 a.m. And he was just sitting there praying to God, like, thank you for this, because he was not supposed to be born. But it wasn't even him. It was him and his wife were not supposed to be able to have kids in the first place. So I think it's daughter. I don't know if he has a son or daughter, but that, like, shouldn't have been born, and they shouldn't have had this baby. And they're just like, we need to be so grateful, and we can't just pray and take for granted the prayers that were answered. It's like, I'm not saying God is this way, but like when someone helps you, you say thank you, but if you just like take their help and don't like thank them, they're not going to want to keep helping you. And so, not that God's like that at all, but it's just your perspective on things, like what are you grateful for? So yeah, and then I wanted to end on in the service, and I think they did it the last time, he said like put your hands out, and he said like repeat this after me or whatever, and he said, Lord, give me the ears to hear what you say. Lord, give me the faith to believe what you say, and Lord, give me the courage to obey what you say. And so I really struggle to know if what I'm hearing is God talking to me, and I guess that is the faith, and to believe it, and then to do it and obey it. And so I think this ties in directly with like use me, is you gotta hear what he's wanting you to do, you gotta believe it, and you gotta obey it. And so I'm gonna keep praying this along with that prayer that I noted down. And I wrote a couple words down that at the very beginning that I want, when I wrote on my prayer card today, I wrote that I wanted to have an unwavering and unfailing faith in God and joy in life and like love. And yeah, I want to be loved by a person, but I want to be loved by a community. I want to be loved by a family. I want to love where I live. I want to love my city. I want to love like where I work, the people I work with. Like I want to be in a loving place in my life, and I want it to be an unwavering love to Jesus and to God, and to be thankful for that. So yeah. Oh wait, and I wanted to write this little thing down. So at the time, like Naaman, back into the 2 Kings verse about how, or story about how he had leprosy and he was healed, and you can go look it up. It's 2 Kings 5, 1 through like 16, I think. He said, so Naaman needed new skin, but what he was able to get from God, yes, he had his skin renewed, but Naaman needed a new heart more than he needed new skin. And so sometimes we think we need a new car, but we don't realize what we really need is a new job, or what we really need, we think we need something fancy when what we really need is this. And it's not that we don't need that, it's that we need something else more. And sometimes we don't know what that main thing is that we need, but God does. And so if right now you're in a place where you need something, you're praying about it and you're not getting it, be persistent, keep praying, keep going for it, like every day for years. Don't give up on that, and don't give up on God, because the timing may not be right, but that doesn't mean the prayer is a no. Honestly, I don't think that God gives us no's, because we always have that possibility in the future. He can give us yeses, but the no's are just temporary, is what I think. Don't take me for granted. Take me on that, but that's just something I'm starting to realize. It's not a no, it's a not right now. And so just do that for me, is to keep being persistent. But if there's something you need right now, understand that you may need something else more, and you may not realize it. You may not realize that you got it, but God planned that for you, and God has that in store for you. So God bless you all. Good night. Sleep well. This will probably be up in the morning, so have a good day. Mwah. Love you guys.